Gemara. We're actually getting closer and closer to the end of the Masechta. Less than a month, we finish Masechta Bava Basra. Okay, today's Gemara is Daf Kuf Nun Beis, and we're up to the very, very top of the page. So we're still learning about the Shchivara, and we established yesterday that if a Shchivara gives it all away, then you don't need a kinyan. Someone is dying, and you don't need a kinyan. But if he recovers, he takes everything back. And then we said if it's a matna shchivra b'mixes, only gives part of it away, then it's just, he's retaining the rest, which means he thinks he's going to survive. So he's giving actually a proper gift. So you need a kinyan. On the other hand, you cannot undo it afterwards. And then we learned, however, if mitzaveh machmas meis, in other words, if he's saying, I'm doing this because he's dying, and he introduced that fact into the conversation, then we say it's as if he makes the whole thing on a tanai, even though he didn't spell it out, as if he made it conditional. So even if he only gives away some of his assets, we say, and you don't need a kinyan because the person is dying, but we say that if he recovers, he can take it back. And furthermore, even if they made a kinyan, and he only gave away part of the assets, but because he introduced what he was doing by saying, he prefaced it by saying, that this person is very sick and he's dying, it's as if it's conditional. It's called mitzaveh machmas misa. Now we're up to the top of the page. We'll have a number of arguments in Rav and Shmuel, where a person writes a will. So there's a shtar and there's a will. A will is basically just recording what's supposed to happen. So it's called in the Gemara, it's called a shtar raya. It's not a shtar. It's not a contract that's supposed to affect anything. It's basically recording what was meant to be, or what he said, or what he was going to do. That's what we call a will. And what do you call it? And this is what he distributes all of his products. And then you have a shtar, which is basically a kinyan, a shtar kinyan. So what happens if the shchivra doesn't rely only on what he said, but he actually made a kinyan? He stood there, and some witnesses standing there, and he said, "Look, I want you to make a kinyan so that this person should be kind." So do we interpret that as if the person is saying, "Look, I'm not relying on these laws of shchivra. I want to do a proper kinyan, but I'm still alive. I want the kinyan to take effect only after I pass away." And in that case, it's ineffective because it doesn't take effect till he dies. And after he dies, can't write a star. Is that what he's saying? Or is it just being meyafes koicha? He just wants to strengthen the position of the beneficiaries that one day in the future they have a thing. And even though he made a kinyan, he only did it in order to help them out, not in any way to usurp the laws of shchivra. How do we interpret a kinyan? How do we interpret if he actually gave them this document? Does that mean that he's not relying on the laws of that divrei shchivra kiksuvin masurim, because he actually had a document written up and he gave it to them? Or do we say no, he's just giving them extra, support? That's going to be the arguments we have in our schools. Look at it. What we learned. Matna shchivra. There was a matna shchivra shekosu ba kinyan. That we're talking about a shchivra. Big machlei how to learn, but we learn Rashbam's mahalach, and that is that a real shchivra gave away all of his assets. And if you give away all your assets, you don't have to make a kinyan, right? You just have to say it, and that's it. But what happened was, it's written that they made a kinyan. Okay. Now the start here is sort of a bit extra, because the main thing is they made a kinyan. What he knows, he didn't rely on just his words. He said, "I want to have a kinyan." Made like a kinyan sudr, which we learned all the time. The most common kinyan that ever existed was a kinyan chalipi, which is exchange of a handkerchief, like when we sell chametz. So that's the kinyan he made. and what happened was, but halachically, the fact that the shtar doesn't make a difference, but you only put it because that's how it's done. Normally, you make a will and you put in the will what's happening. So he wrote in the will that we made a kinyan. Is Bei Rav Mashmei the Rav Hamdi. So the yeshiva of Rav said, the name of Rav, it's an expression in the Gemara, you're riding on two different animals. In other words, it's sort of a hybrid. You behaved as if you're a shchivra, and you behaved as if you're a healthy person, because why make a kinyan? So how do we interpret it? We'll see in a minute. Shmuel says, I don't know how to understand what happened here. And the Gemara explains. She's riding on two animals. On the one hand, kimatnas body. The fact that he did not rely on the laws of shchivra, and he said, no, it's not enough. It's insufficient. We need to make a kinyan. Shows that he can treat it like an ordinary gift that he's giving away. He's gifting. Um, and also Harei Kematna Shchimra. And the Morna spells out in what respect is it like a Shchimra? Harei Kematna's body Sheim Amadena Chayza. Once you made that kinyan, even if the guy improves, you cannot take it back. You gave away all of his assets, but you made a kinyan. By making a kinyan, you've demonstrated that you're not relying on the rules of Shchiv Mara. You want to do your own thing. A kinyan, okay, it's like any other gift. You can't be an Indian giver. Once you gave it, you can't give it back. Take it back. So, in what sense, Harei Kimata Shchiv Mara? In what sense is like a Shchiv Mara? In a sense where, as we're going to see, in a case as a bari, it's ineffective, but as a Shchiv Mara, it is. And what is that? The idea that he says somebody owes me an oral loan, and the money, I want that money to go to someone else. Now, in ordinary life, you can't do that. We learned before you can swap, you can do a star, a milva and a star, you can transfer to somebody else. And the reason is because there's something tangible here. There's a piece of paper, a document, and you're transferring the document. So along with the document comes also all of the shibud. Big machlek is a shayim if you have to spell out the whole shibudeha when you transfer the star, all of its indebtedness and all the liens and mortgages, or you don't even have to say that, it's automatic. Big machlekes, especially about shibura, if you have to say it. But an oral loan, there's nothing to transfer. And what's the kinyan chal? The money's no longer here, it was used up already. Even if you didn't use it up, I have a right to use it up. The debt itself is intangible. So what are you transferring? Can't. But a shchivna can. And therefore, so this person, even though he added the word kinyan, will give him the benefit of shchivna that he can also transfer these oral loans. She'im amar hava also plenty, transfers over. And Shmuel says, no, I don't know what he means because it's quite possible. Shema, and the person now is dead, you can't even ask him. Shema, over the kinyan. The fact that he went out of his way to make a kinyan and then he put in a star, maybe he wants it to be like an ordinary transaction. That what? But he doesn't want it to take place while he's alive. He wants it to take place after he dies. The ain star lachamisa, once he's dead, it's ineffective. So maybe it falls away because he took it away from by his action. He took it away from the rules of Shchiv Mara, and therefore it's ineffective. Because still he doesn't want it to take effect till after he dies. It's not like Rav says it takes effect straight away. It does not. It takes effect after he dies, and after he dies, you can't give a star. Says the Gemara. So, in other words, it's as if he changed his mind. That's what we're saying. He's giving his last instructions, but then he's not want to make a kinyan. And we said before, you can change your mind. Nothing happens till after he dies. He can continue to change his mind. The moment he said, let's make a kinyan, doesn't matter 5 minutes ago he said, that this is my last will and testament, and so on and so forth. It becomes like an ordinary thing, like an ordinary kinyan. And what's he selling with this kinyan? That this should take effect after the person dies. It doesn't work that way. Talking about we have a contradiction between Rav and Rav. Shmuel. The Sholach Ravin, Mash made Rabavu. Ravin once sent in the name of Rabavu. Habiyadi, you should know. Sholach Rabbi Lazar, who is mainly next to Israel, but we also know that he also learned from Shmuel. He also learned from Rav and Bava for a while. So he learned from everybody, from all the giants. Rav, Shmuel, Rabbi Yechanan. His main teacher was Rabbi Yechanan. But you should know that Rabbi Lazar sent Legoyle back to Babel, Mishum Rabbeinu, name of Rabbeinu. The Gemara writes Rabbeinu means Rav. Shechiv Meram sometimes means Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, but the Gemara means usually Rav. Shechiv Meram, it says, Kisvo, I want you to write. The Tnu, I want you to write and give Mana Leplani. In other words, he's saying, I want it to be in the form of a star, which the previous Rav means, no Shechiv Meram, I want it to be like an ordinary Matnas body. Here he said, write and give it. Vamesi died. Ain't Kaisim, you don't write it. What do you mean? Because it sounds like he doesn't want it to be follow the rules of Shchivra. He wants it to be like a star, but he wants it to be like a Shchivra. It should take effect only after he dies. Before Rav said that if you make a kinyan or that, he wants it to take place right now, and therefore it's effective, and you cannot even change your mind. And now Rav is saying no, that maybe he wants it. He wants both worlds. He wants it should not take effect till after he dies, but he wants it to be like a star, not the rules of Shchivra. And therefore, it can't work because once he's dead, star doesn't work. So Rav is contradicting himself. And Shmuel says, Hilchos HaKoysev. And Shmuel says, you do right. Before Shmuel says that we don't know what he's thinking, maybe he doesn't want to take effect after he dies and it's useless. And now he's saying, yeah, write it, as if take effect right straight away. Kasha the Rabbi, Kasha Shmuel, Shmuel, both contradicting each other. Says Gemara as follows: the Rabbi, like Kasha, I can make a big difference, and the difference is over here is talking about the Konu Minei. In this second case, he didn't make a kinyan. In the first case, he made a kinyan, right? The stars actually placed second place. The main thing is that they made a kinyan. The fact that he made a kinyan and didn't rely on his words is what he's clearly saying is, I want to take effect straight away. That's why he's making a kinyan. I want to take effect now. That's why Rav said it's a matnas bari. It's a gift. You cannot change your mind. When he told them, write, I want you to go ahead and write and give them a star, he didn't make a kinyan yet. So what does he want? He wants it to be like a star, take a place after he passes away. Doesn't work. Shmuel like Kasha as well. Why not? Now what? In the second case, in the first case, we say we don't know what he's thinking. Maybe he doesn't want he doesn't want shchivra. Maybe he wants it to work like a matnas body, but only after he dies. So it doesn't work. However, in the second case, why Shmuel holds it works is when he says write a star, it's talking about a case where the yafa is koichai. The star is not the kinyan. The star is there to help out the buyer. How do we know? As the Gemara will soon say, that meyafa is koichai. You write in the wording of the star. This is on top of the gift that I'm giving you this record. You have a record, a deed. So being meyafa's koichan. And therefore, because meyafa's koichan, I wrote clearly, this is on top of the gift. I mean, b'chayav. That's why Shmuel says in the second case, yes, you're right, give it, because it's a matnas body. Yosef Nachman Yitzchak Achoyde the Rav, and Nachman just sat behind the Rav, and Yosef Rav Kamed Rav Nachman. So the two of Nachmans, and this is very interesting because we had a machlekes a long time ago. I think it was between Rashi and Tosfos, who was Rav Nachman? Because most times in Shas we have Rav Nachman. There's two Rav Nachmans. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, mostly, with the name of father, and sometimes Rav Nachman by Yaakov. So Rashi says Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, that is the Stam Rav Nachman. And Tosfos doesn't like it because, I don't know if he brings this Gemara here. Tosfos doesn't like it because he says, then how come so many times the Gemara says Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, and then so many other times it says Rav Nachman? If it's the same person, make up your mind. You want to call him Stam Rav Nachman or by his father. So Tosfos there says Rav Nachman by Yaakov is Rav Nachman, and that's why very, very seldom is he called Rav Nachman by Yaakov. But really, from the Gemara here, is a Kasha and Rashi, because it's clearly here. Rav Nachman Yitzchak sat in the room together with Rav Nachman. And he was actually a Talmud of Rav Nachman. He sat behind Rav. In the way we know how it works in the seating arrangement. Remember, in the Bava Kama, that those who were close to the yeshiva with a higher madrega of Talmidim, those are further away, like the Sanhedrin, were in a lower class. So Nachman Yitzchak was a student of Nachman, plus he was, lower than Rav. So it seems like Tosfos, l'chayda from here, but Nachman by Yaakov is Rav Nachman. Anyway, that's a side issue. So Rav Kabayman and Miyama, so he asked him, Rav was asking, Miyama Shmuel, Shem Lagam Laknaisa, B'Shtav, did Shmuel really say that we think that if he made a kinyan, then maybe he's changing his mind, he doesn't want to take effect until after he dies, and after he dies he can't give a star, so therefore we don't give it at all. But didn't Rabbi Yehuda say in the name of Shmuel, he wrote it down. He wrote a star. Even though made a kinyan. If he stood up, in other words, doesn't lose the status of a shchivra. You just said at the top of the page, Shmuel said that if he made a kinyan and he put in the star, we say that's it. It means he doesn't want to follow the rules of shchivra anymore, and therefore the whole thing falls apart because he wants to take place after he dies, and the whole thing falls apart. Shmuel clearly said that if it's a shchivra, even though he's recording a star with a kinyan, it's still a shchivra, and after he dies, it's given over to the people, and if he recovers, he gets to keep it. Omad. He gets it back. In other words, it doesn't convert into a matana. It remains in this category of a shchimra. Because the yedua, it's known. Shalahaya kinyan, even though he made a kinyan, the purpose was machmas amisa. The whole reason why he did all this is because he thought he was dying, and therefore, if he didn't die, the kinyan unravels. Rabbi asked that question. The achvule biyodei, Rav Nachman then pointed with his finger as if to say, "I know." And leave me alone, or he was trying to point an answer with his finger. The Ishtik didn't say anything. He come, the Nachman Yitzchak sat in the back of the room, was too embarrassed or intimidated to ask what just happened there. So he come after Nachman, what was that all about? What did he demonstrate to you? Amalei, what he demonstrated to me was either he didn't say anything but figured it out on his own, or somehow or another with his finger he showed me going up. The miyafa is koichai. I'm talking about, or Shmuel is talking about a case where the purpose of the star was to give more support to the beneficiary. That 10 years from now, people are going to question why did you end up with this house. So he has over here a proof. The star raya. It's not the kinyan. This is a raya. And even if he makes him a kinyan, the kinyan is only that nobody should come in and complain. As we know that most disruptions in families are the Yerushas. So he wanted to make sure that everything is placid, everything is calm. What's an example? How do you do that? You record in the star, and we made a kinyan, and you add Moisiv al Matantada in addition to this matana. Everything that I wrote before stays the same, and I made a kinyan to give him more support. You're saying you're adding more. That was in addition to the fact that I gave him orally a matana, which is shchid mara. I'm also doing these extra things. Why? To help him out. That's called meyafas koiche. And in that case, Rav Shmuel said meyafas koiche. Definitely, it remains a shchid. He's not changing his mind, and we know exactly what it means. Taking it further, Shita, there's no question. Kosav lezeh, the kosav lezeh. Let's say he wrote a document, a will, and gave everything over to Reuven. Then 20 minutes later, he wrote another document and he gave everything over to Shimon. Notice he changed his mind. Hainu, this is no question that the Chiyasar Avdim is what Avdim once told us. Omar, he said that daitike bevatelas daitike, that the second star counts as the first one, because since nothing happens till the very end, he dies, he can continuously change his mind. So he cancels the first star. Doesn't matter what he wrote, and that's why you always look for the latest will. Right? You don't look for the will that he wrote earlier on. You want to look for the latest will. Maybe he changed, and you always follow the last will. That's why it's so important to date a will. Kosav v'zicha lezeh. Kosav v'zicha lezeh. Let's say he gave all he wrote a document, giving everything over to Reuben, but he actually handed him over the document. The previous case was he didn't hand him over the document, he wrote it down. The second case we're doing right now is he handed over the document. Why would he hand over the document? He's strengthening the position of Reuben by handing over the document. And then he wrote a second one. How do we interpret this? He did something extra here, something he wasn't necessary. Okay, we know he wrote the document down just to remember, but he gave it while he was alive. He gave it to the beneficiary, the first one. Who is the main beneficiary? The first one you gave the document to, but you didn't have to? Is as if you're changing everything to a matter body or something, or is it the second person? Rav, man, the Gemara explained. Rav says Rishon Kana. The first one is Koine because since you didn't have to give him the document, you did. It's as if you're giving him matlas bari. So now it becomes the first person's document. Because this is the case before we made a kinyan and Rav said you're riding on two animals. In other words, it has a matlas bari because you did something that was unnecessary. Previously, you made a kinyan. Here, you handed over the document. Not that it was a kinyan here, but you gave him a document in his hand while you were alive. That's Rav. Shmuel says, no. Sheini Kana. It has a full din of a shchimera. The fact you gave him a document doesn't change anything. Just like before in the case of a kinyan, doesn't change anything. The fact that you gave a document, no kinyan, gave him a document doesn't change anything. A shchimera and a shchimera is the last instructions you gave. That is what counts. The Gemara explains. Rabbi Bishop how they come out of the body. We treat it like a matter of the body because you did something that was so unnecessary, and by giving over the document, Shmuel Sheini Kana, second verse kind of. Just because the document doesn't change anything, it's a matna shchibra, doesn't take effect till afterwards, and therefore the last will and testament is what counts. Says the Gemara, it's exactly the same argument previously, where there was a kinyan. Rav says the fact you did something actually made a kinyan means you don't want to follow the rules of shchibra, you want to follow the rules of matnas bari, and therefore you cannot take it back. And according to Shmuel over there, we know maybe you change your mind and you want the fact that you added a kinyan doesn't change the fact that still might be you want to take place after he dies. And now we're having exactly the same thing here. The same thing before. Before the previous case was you made a kinyan, and here you gave the star over to the other person. The idea is you did something extra. How do we interpret that additional step that you took? If we would say the first case only where there's a kinyan, Rav, only over there Rav says you changed the rules, you've changed the whole modus operandi, mishum the economy. You made a kinyan. Why do you make a kinyan? Whatever he says is good enough. The fact that you made a kinyan sudar means that you don't want it to be like a shchimera. That's why Rav says there today. There we said, you know what? We treat it like a matnas body. and that is that once you can't change your mind, and even though you recovered and you gave it all away, too bad. In this case here, you didn't make a kinyan. They're like all you did was you recorded it, but what you did was you took that star that you recorded, the will, and you actually gave it. Usually you don't give a will until after the person passes away. You open up the will and you see all the instructions. Here you gave it to the beneficiary before. We would have thought that's not considered changing the rules. You just want to give them. They should have it already in their possession. Maybe he's made it to Shmuel, then it still remains a Shchivra. The Yitma only case number 2, where you just gave the star, maybe Bahakam Shmuel, only over here Shmuel says that what? That it's still considered a Shchimera. Aval Bahak, but in the first case where you actually made a kinyan, maybe Shmuel agrees with Rav. Maybe he's Rav. You made a kinyan, which is totally unnecessary. Maybe you don't want it to rely on the laws of Shchimera. You want it to be a regular gift. You need them both. Says the Gemara, Besura Masna Hachi. This is how we learned the argument in Rabbi Shmuel in Surah. But the in Pumpadisa, they learned the argument slightly different. Masna Hachi, this is how they learned it. They sent from the yeshiva of Rav to Shmuel after Rav passed away. Yilamdeinu Rabbeinu, teach us. So they called him now Rabbeinu. Rav must have passed away. If a Shchimera wrote all of his assets to somebody else, the konumiyade and made a kinyan. Mao. Big machlek. This is the same case we had before, or different. But anyway, but the idea is that you did something you didn't have to do. Shalach Lu, he answered them back. Ein acha kinyan klum. That's it. Once you made a kinyan and he recovers, too bad. Ein acha kinyan. Once you made a kinyan, it becomes a shtar matan. So we thought. In other words, let's say he wrote. So some people say we're going back to the first case. Some people say we're going back to the second case where you wrote to one person, then you wrote to another person. So ein acha kinyan klum means if the first person that you gave it to. The Ram likes this probably better. The first person that you gave it to, you made a kinyan. Then even though 10 minutes later you decide to give it to somebody else, ain't a kinyan klum. You can't change your mind. So some and something I thought, okay, hani milacha. You want to change your mind. You're distributing your full all your assets. First you gave it to Reuven, and now you want to give it to Shimon. Too late. Since you made a kinyan with Reuven, ain't la'acha kinyan klum. But la'atzmai, if he recovers and for himself he wants it back, even though he made a kinyan, we thought that maybe that's different. And you can take it back, like any Shchimera. Loy. Rabuna came with Kufri. Pirsha, he explained, Bein la'atzmai, bein la'achedim. It makes no difference whether it's la'atzmai or whether it's la'achedim. It doesn't make a difference. I want that even for himself. Too bad. Once you made a kinyan, you changed the process. It's no longer considered Shchimera. It's now considered like a what do you call it? Like a kinyan matana. Matna's body, and that's it. You cannot change your mind for anybody. And the Gemara concludes that there was a person who was dying and made a kinyan, and now he got recovered. He wanted it back. Also, the Kam made the Rabuna. Unfortunately, went to the same Rabuna who made this rule before. And somebody said, "My Abla, what can I do for you?" So you didn't do it the normal way. A shchivmera doesn't make kinyanim, and the fact that you made kinyanim, that means that you want it to be like a matna, like a matana, and you cannot revert, you cannot change your mind. See you tomorrow, Mitzvah. Have a good day.